Thank you very much. Whether that last judgment is okay, I leave it up to you. But anyway, before I start my presentation, I also want to say that we had a very strong consortium, and I first of all want to thank everyone who has contributed for all the hard work, the creativity, the patience now and then, waiting for each other sometimes. But overall, I think you all did, all the people that were listed there in the previous slide and on the opening slide, they all did a perfect job. But now my duty is to give you an overview of where we ended up. What is the approach that we eventually designed? And maybe skip the next, skip the first two slides just because of time and go to the next one. Okay, when we started, we found out that there were already many approaches for sustainability, and they have very different characters. Say what most often hits the newspaper, the headlines of the newspapers is, for instance, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, which companies are more sustainable, which products are more sustainable. But if you really look at these ratings, how they are constructed, you see, now sometimes they are not even public, you do not know how they are constructed, but if you look at it, you often see that it's very ad hoc. You see, say, some ad hoc scoring systems, rating systems, numbers are counted together, and of course that leads to some ranking, but what is the basis for that? Does it really make sense to do it that way? There are many other methods that are focused on very specific products, for instance, sustainability ratings for biofuels, which make sense to do that for specific products, but they are not widely applicable. And some are just on specific elements of sustainability, and most important are those for an economic assessment and environmental assessment. So we wanted to have something that overcomes all these problems. So it should cover all the dimensions of sustainability in a comprehensive way. It should be applicable to a wide range of technologies, and it should provide what we call a rigorous assessment from cause to effect, so that we really know, okay, what in the end impact most the lives of people and our natural environment. So, and always the example has been environmental life cycle assessment, say a well-established methodology, but we must also note that, okay, 20 or 25 years there was hardly something like this, say all this thinking is not more than 20 years old, but it has established into a well-accepted methodology with ISO standardization, laid down in databases, etc., applied by thousands and thousands of practitioners in science and industry. Say, sorry, you go quick.
Okay, so we were here.
Yeah.
Do you want to be on a blank?
No, first this one still.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you all know the basis of this method. You start with elementary interactions, say between some production system or whatever and the environment. You calculate so-called midpoints, impacts, and then you go to final impacts, which in this case now well established as human health, natural environment, and natural resources. And initially, we started with 3 work packages: social, economic, and environmental assessment, people, planet, profit. So initially we started with developing 3 of these pictures. Say, this is one for environment, one for the social, and one for economic. But at a given moment we got stuck, because there is quite some overlap, say, between these various systems, social and economic and environmental, and sometimes, say, you could say the economic, the prosperity of people is also determines how how they feel, how they are in a social way. So there are a lot of interactions, and that made it complex. And furthermore, there are also, for instance, environmental health impacts are part of the environmental subsystem. Occupational health is part of the social subsystem. So why would we separate them? You know the,
Now,
so we were, say at a given moment, someone stood up, and it was again Mark Huybrechts. His name is, he could be, is Mark here?
yes. Yeah.
No, he's not here.
I had seen you. Good morning. And he said, why don't we throw away these three pillars? Why don't we start from scratch? And okay, that caused some pandemonium, you can imagine. Okay, but in the end it was felt to be a good idea to just see where we stood, what do we really want to measure, and how we do that. And then we come to the next slide. In the end, we constructed, we said you can cover everything with 5 impact categories. And say what we used for that is to have something that is, in McKinsey terms, mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And I think we have now a list of things that are that each cover 5 important elements of what we need to assess for a complete sustainability assessment that can be separated. As you always need to be sharp in your definitions. That caused some issues now and then, but that together represent everything that you want to measure. So the impact on human health, social well-being, prosperity, natural environment, and exhaustible resources. And what we always kept in mind, of course, is the basic definition of sustainability given by Brundtland about the present generation and future generation, and both are covered. Say the first 3 mainly impact present generations, is not entirely true, but roughly, and the second mainly impact are especially relevant for future generations, or at least there is the emphasis. So, and in the end we were able to construct a kind of, we do not call it midpoint, endpoint, but say cause-effect chain for all these 5 categories. So we have overall sustainability assessment, how we do that, I'll come back to that later. And then these 5 impact categories, and there are primary impacts, and of course if you go further back down there are primary interventions, costs, environmental emissions, social interventions, etc. I would like to go briefly now through these 5 categories.
Shut.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So the first is the impact on human health. And part of that is the same as for environmental life cycle analysis. That's this one. This is exactly similar to what is normally used in environmental life cycle assessment. But we added 2 elements. That's the impact on the occupational health, and that was quite far elaborated. You have certain primary impacts, and they can be counted together, and you have the same. In the end, you have one measure for everything. That's the daily disability adjusted life years lost. So that was further elaborated. What also should be added is the consumer impact on health. Say technologies and products have an impact on health also in the consumption phase. We elaborated that for 1 or 2 specific situations, but that is something that needs to be developed further still. Yes. For social well-being, we had say this is something that's really in the early stages. There are quite some reports and overviews of what all should be counted there, but there is not something. Say the thing that we have for environmental life cycle analysis, where you go from primary impacts to an overall indicator. And what we did is, first of all, we started on the basis of literature. We did some further inventories with help of Delphi assessment. We came to a first list of impacts, and this is not an exhaustive list, but this is a list that was for the project that we do now, and for the case studies that we elaborate now, a first list, but this can be extended. Say there will be many more, may probably need to be added. we then had the problem, okay, how do we organize that? And we used here something that was proposed by Bo Wedema a few years ago in 4 major impact categories. Say, one is called safety, security and tranquility, how people feel in their lives, whether they are employed or not, how safe they feel. Autonomy, whether they are free to do what they want. Equality is clear, can be income inequality, can have to do with income inequalities, gender inequalities, etc. And participation and influence. Say to what extent you can develop the development of society. We have thought of breaking that down in 2 groups. Say this is more individual, this is more collective. But in the end, we have decided to keep that together, also in order to have not too many impact categories. Yes? Then the impact on what we call the impact on prosperity, because we want to also have something really measuring, okay, how well are people, say whether it's material or not, but how is the affluence of people. So that is prosperity determined by labor, capital and resource productivity. And we also have an element in there, okay, the impact on novelty, because sometimes prosperity increases just by changes in factor costs. Say if things become cheaper, people become more wealthy. But sometimes a new technology also can create completely new products and markets, and that will have a much stronger positive impact on prosperity and how affluent people feel than just having cheaper products. Okay, this is then the impact on natural environment. Basically in the 3 well-known categories, marine ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems and terrestrial ecosystems, with all the different subcategories. This is completely equal to what is used in environmental life cycle assessment. And then finally we have the impact, what we call the impact on exhaustible resources, to separate them, to make clear, okay, this is not about the impact on natural resources like fish and wood, but only the exhaustible resources. We separate mineral extraction and fossil fuel extraction. So then we come to the total picture again, because we have now these 5 categories, and in the end the ideal is that in these 5 categories we can have a rigorous cause-effect. We can have rigorous cause-effect relationships and have an impact assessment that is what you could call science-based. And of course, choices need to be made. Say, for instance, one choice that always is there is time preference. For instance, that's already when you have impact. For instance, climate impacts, the impacts of climate change. You have to choose a time horizon, whether it's 20 or 100 or 500 years. So there are always some elements that you could say preferences, but to a large extent, it is okay. Just go through the cause-effect chain and measuring exactly what it's doing good modeling. And of course, there are quite some uncertainties still, but these can, to a large extent, be reduced by further research. But then, and there is difference where we stand. Say, for environmental life cycle analysis, we already have quite some information. For social well-being, we are still in the beginning of that, and we should. But that comes also back to the point that I made first. People always ask, how should we do that, the social well-being assessment? We don't have databases, but when we started with environmental life cycle assessment, we didn't have databases either. There was no CIMA-Pro or whatever that could be used, where you just plug your product in and you get the numbers. So also here we did some, for social well-being assessment, I would say we stand where we stood 20 years ago in environmental life cycle assessment. But okay, having said that, we have these 5 impacts, and then we need to aggregate them in one or the other way. And there we have 3 choices that are all in the software that we have produced. And one of them is not aggregate at all. Say, okay, we have just 5 impacts, and every decision maker can choose, okay, how do I see the 5 impacts, I have, for instance, two variants of technologies, I compare them and I see, okay, one scores better on this one and the other on that one, and that's it. And we have a graphic representation to do that. Second is multi-criteria analysis, also implemented in the system. And the third is that you go to aggregation and try to get to one number. And also for that, we developed the first set of weighting factors. But this is a weighting factor. These weighting factors are not science-based, they are based on preferences. What you always need before doing that is to have some type of normalization. And that was also completely new, because normalization in certain areas for environmental life cycle analysis is very common already, but for the other areas it still had to be developed. We have done that as well. So in the end you have a total overview of the system. Okay, good. Getting back to the full picture again. So. This is a nice graphical representation of the outcome of the project. The 5 elements based on technology characterization and ending with complete sustainable technology assessment. So in the end, we believe that we have laid the groundwork, at least, for a new approach, and a new and also rigorous approach to sustainability assessment. Today you'll hear much more about many of the details, but also the first applications of the methodology, and we look forward to your reactions and also to work with you on a further elaboration of the methodology. So thank you very much.